Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whatever frame of mind you may be in. My name is Samuel Davis III, and I'm the host of Uplift Our Community podcast, powered by Bridge Visions. This is where we make room for real conversations, real growth, and real community. Today, we're opening up a conversation that touches a lot of families in different ways. The topic is when our elders change, navigating aging parents, family roles, and hard conversations. And I want to be clear from the beginning, even though my wife and I are currently caregivers, this is not just a caregiving conversation. Some people are full-time caregivers. Some are checking on parents from a distance. Some are dealing with older relatives who are becoming more fixed in their ways. Some are grieving a parent or elder who has recently passed, and some are simply trying to figure out how to communicate with aging loved ones while still respecting them and protecting their own peace. There comes a point in life when we start noticing changes in the people who raised us, guided us, corrected us, protected us, or shaped us. Sometimes those changes are physical. Sometimes they are emotional. Sometimes they show up as stubbornness, fear, silence, repetition, control, or resistance. And when that happens, the family has to adjust. Roles begin to shift. The person who once gave direction may now need patience. The person who once stood strong may now need support. And the grown child, nephew, niece, grandchild, spouse, or family member may find themselves trying to balance love, respect, frustration, grief, and responsibility all at the same time. Today, we want to talk honestly and respectfully about what happens when our elders begin to change and how we learn to change with them. Because aging does not just affect the person getting older, it affects the whole family system. So before I bring the crew in, and I want us to hold this thought, you can honor your elders and still be honest about how hard the journey can be. With that being said, let me go ahead and bring in the crew. Okay, guys, welcome. With that being said, just open up the space and the place, guys. I want to ask you, what do you think about that? What I said right there, Gordon, talk to me. Tell me where you feel and what you think about that.
I thought those were some very thoughtful comments because it wasn't just looking at it from one perspective. It really was. I feel like it was really trying to take into account everybody's perspective, even though you can't always be in everybody's perspective. I haven't necessarily had the opportunity, I guess, if you call it, to have to, take care of somebody that's getting to that point where, maybe they need more care. So I can't, it's hard to talk about something that you haven't fully experienced just yet. And I think that's my thing. But I think it was very thoughtful the way you put that together because it's never just one sided, right?
Mm, definitely. Jay, what you think?
I'm gonna piggyback on Gordon, and the fact of the matter is that you're seeing your like in my case, look at my mother seeing my mother getting older and not being as fast, and and sometimes in discomfort slash pain. It hits a core of you because somebody that you sing with so much strength and just and vulnerability, you realize on how fragile life is and how that it is a limited thing for its quality and time. You know?
Mm, yeah, it's definitely it's definitely is a hurtful thing. I know, and I don't want to get see how to say this. I want to phrase this properly. Um, Gordon, I know you had just lost your mother, um, and I know that there must have been possibly some telltale signs. You may have seen some things going. I don't know if you even want to discuss that, if you're interested in or even care to discuss that. Was there a point, and I'll put this question up right here. When did you first realize your parent, elder, or older loved one was changing? Did you at all see or recognize anything happening to your mother before she passed?
No, honestly, it was kind of a surprise, although, she had been dealing with health problems for a while. She hadn't been healthy for a while. I mean, I want to say 5-10 years at minimum.
Wow.
So she had been in that. She had been dealing with those health challenges for a good amount of time, and so things would happen, and there'd be some big ups and downs, and the downs always were followed up with an up, right? The downs were always like, something's really bad, but she's feeling better, she's good now, and a lot of that back and forth. And I'm sure some of it had to do with her maintaining her privacy and not necessarily sharing everything going on with all of us, which I can fully respect, right? So when she did pass, prior to her passing, which honestly was only a couple of days or something like that, we got the phone call because I'm one of 3 brothers, and I'm the oldest. Me and the middle brother live out here in California. Our youngest lived near Buffalo, where she was living at the time. And we got that phone call that, she's in the hospital again or whatever. She's not doing well again, things like that. And so obviously, it's not a good phone call to get, but your first thought isn't, let's get ready for the worst, right? That honestly, that never even entered my mind until finally we got another phone call right after. And that's when my brother, who was there, explained that it was actually pretty bad. And so there wasn't this gradual transition where, oh no, she's starting to fade, she's not doing so well, whatever. Prior to her passing, she did start to have challenges with memory and things like that, but nothing major, like it wasn't full on Alzheimer's or dementia or anything like that. It was just, she'd forget little things here and there. And so when she finally passed, it was kind of a surprise, unfortunately.
Jay, with you now, your mother's still here, and I believe your father's still too, correct?
No, he passed about 7 or so years ago. 7.
Have you recognized any change with your mother then?
My mother's always been like a force of nature, so this shot is horrible. There you go. Thank you. All right. There you go. There you go. My manager will be contacting you. So the deal is that when my mother she had to have a hip replacement. And that was probably somewhere about 15, 20 years ago. And I remember her being in the hospital and just seeing, with the medicine and the stress of being there and all that, she was so cranky, just mean, But when I seen her starting the physical therapy, I realized that cranky and mean was fear, And that was something where it really hit me, was that, wow, my mom gets scared. My mom she can experience fear. She, Oliver, I was still, I guess about that time, about 40 or so. And it never entered my mind, It was just one, I like to think I'm a thinker, but it never entered my mind that somebody who growing up in a single parent household, force of nature, never say die. I was just making things happen, But the fact of the matter is, to see that, somebody that raised you, see them not having all the answers, seeing them scared, seeing them uncomfortable, seeing them in such a vulnerable position.
Mhm.
It was a rude awakening about the finiteness of life, and the instability of at times. So I realized my mother didn't have all the answers, and she was vulnerable, and she could get hurt, and I felt that pain for her, and I was scared for her, so.
I definitely want to say I appreciate you saying that. To recognize and have the wherewithal to recognize that she had fear in yourself is huge, because a lot of times you just say, she got an attitude. You got an attitude, and that's what a lot of people just brush it off as. And you don't know what in the world, especially being a single parent household that she was raising you in, you don't know what weight of the world that she's carrying. And with you saying that really says something about you, Jerome. Honestly, it says something about you as a person, because not that many people think like that. And I can say that because our situation, and I'll just kind of go briefly on it, was we were kind of thrust into ours after the passing of my sister-in-law. Then we discovered that she was holding that side of the family together back east, all on her own. No one said nothing. And then she passes away, and now we got two. And you have to separate church from state. Now, our situation, again, is definitely a lot different, being that we have memory care issues. But sometimes you got to wonder, is it the disease or is it the person? And what do I play in this role? Now, do I catch an attitude? Because is he doing that on purpose? Or is that disease really affecting him? And how would it affect me if that was me? When you start recognizing mortality, it changes everything. It's a major game changer. You want to go back on that one? On that, you want to say anything on that, Jerome?
Well, it's that part of my mind that flashes to the future, thinking like, wow, will my daughter be there for me like that? You would hope, to have that family there. Or will I feel like a burden? Will I need to just put me in a home, forget about me? It's just that. But I'll speak from my experience with my mother. She's very unselfish, and I used to think it was just a Black mom thing, but the more I talk to different friends over the year, as long as your mother is complaining, she's okay. As long as she's fussing or what have you. But when she gets quiet, I get scared. Okay. I'm thinking, okay, what's bothering you? All right. Oh, you didn't organize your medicine right? Well, that's my job, Mom. Remember, we had that deal. I come in, I organize your medicine, because when she has some health issues, she might have not organized the medicine correctly. Okay. So, but you get an older person, they're so staunch and so rigid about their, being the grown up and what have you. You're 50, 60, whatever years old, and they're still the grown up, So it's long story short is that part. I made a deal with my mom about taking care of certain things to just help take the stress out of it. And it doesn't make you weak. The fact of the matter is that you are my mother, you're my family, and that's part of my job. I'm the dear child in the family, just like your sister-in-law was a dear child in their family. That was the one that took the brunt of everything, and it took the responsibilities. So everybody else could do what they had to do, So it's like, so shout out to your past sister. I'm sorry for the loss, but it's just that, especially when you have to take on that role, it should be a moment of reflection and appreciation, for you may have stress you're dealing with now, but think of all the stuff she saved you from before. You didn't even know,
Man.
right? Like sainthood.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I know with my mother-in-law, she has Alzheimer's, and she has very short memory. She can go from one room to the other and forget what she was looking for. And there are sometimes when she comes back and she says goodnight 5 times.
Oh, wow.
Good night. I just want to let you know I love you. Blah, blah, blah. She leaves. She comes back again 2 minutes later. Hey, I don't know if I said it, but I just want to let you know I love you. You know, blah, blah, blah. And that, first off, the fact that she's sending love my way, you know, 4 or 5 times, you know, a night, it just tells me something about what her spirit is like. You know, that's one thing. The other thing when she gets forgetful for me is, you think about what you just said earlier, what you said a minute ago. You know how many times that moms have, when you had friends come over and they cook food for all of your friends, and you're like, man, I couldn't do that, and I wouldn't want to think about cooking food for all 6 of you guys hanging out. She's she's cooking in the kitchen while we're over here playing games or talking, you know. Or how many times has mom came and cleaned up behind you? You know, how many times has mom or dad saved you for certain things? Those things are what I said, going back to what you were saying, are karmic to me. I do things because I feel, and this is just me, that it's going to come back to me in God's own way. And I do things because I don't do a lot of things because I believe in karma. And I do a lot of things because of karma. So with that being said, Gordon, what do you think? You want to jump in on that part right there before we get to this next question there?
Yeah. So you had mentioned that when you're going through these challenges with people that are dealing with those kind of mental challenges themselves, and you're wondering, is this them or is this the illness? That was something that definitely came up with our situation, because, you know, the more our mom needed help and the more we tried to help to alleviate those situations, the more there was some pushback sometimes, you know, because you know, I'm sure in her mind she's dealing with being this independent woman for most of her life, you know, and now having to give up some of that and come to this realization that now she actually needs help, and some of the help had to do with things like finance, and that's always such a hard thing, you know, trying to, you know, help somebody with their money and how are they spending it. And so it was one of those challenges where I had to step back and say, you know what, this is not 100% her. This is her dealing with the first, the illness, secondly, giving up this independence that is being taken from her. It's not like she's having to let go of it. It's actually being taken from her, right?
Yeah.
And then you guys, I think both of you guys mentioned kind of like the idea of karma. Is like, my parents, you know, we did not have a perfect household, but I could not tell you any one time that I needed either of my parents and they weren't there. They were always there, from little things to big things, you know, like all kinds of stuff, right? Always, never, no questions asked. Just if I needed them, they'd be there. No questions asked. They show up and they'd be there. Right.
And you know, that's the brilliant part right there. I'm sorry to step on that.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Something earlier, you just jogged my memory.
Yeah.
When you talk about karma, like when I was saying it, I'm thinking about, okay, what my daughter will do for me, what have you. So I'm thinking the future. You're talking about the good was already done on your behalf and you're paying it back.
Yeah.
You know, you're paying, you're giving it back. The love was put into you, the care, the time, the late nights, early mornings, all that was put into you. Yeah. And guess what? It wasn't about, okay, what can I get from them now? It's about me doing right for my family and my, you know, my mom and dad. That I think that is so lost on a lot of people right now. That part is so lost.
Yeah, that's true. Go ahead, Gordon. Finish up what you
I'm sorry. No, you're good. You're good. I think that was an important thing to pause on and really kind of think about it for a few seconds or whatever, because what you're saying regarding that being lost is that, you know, I didn't choose my parents. I was just lucky enough that God gave me those two, and that they were those type of people that wouldn't question when their children needed something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm, prior to my mom passing, having to do a little bit more, right, for her, so that she could have as close to normal life as possible, was one of those things where I had to come to realization that now it's time for me to pay back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then with my dad, so my mom passed away last July. It'll be almost a year and a couple months now.
Sorry.
And no, thank you. And so my brother and I went to New York. We buried her. We dealt with all this stuff. And then we came back, and shortly after we came back, my dad was in the hospital. And so, and he's better now, right? But ever since that, he hasn't necessarily been 100%. Like, mentally, he's good. Like, he's sharp as always. But he's the kind of guy that he works like physical landscaping and taking care of orchards and things like that every day, 10, 12 hours a day. It's like it's a lifestyle more than a job for him, and he loves it. Like, he wouldn't change a thing. But he's in his 70s, and because of the scare that was 70s, not old, but because of the scare that he had where he was in the hospital, he hasn't been 100% back. And so that creates a situation where every once in a while he'll need a little bit of help. He'll have a big job, and we'll have to go and we'll help him. My boys and I will go and help him. More so that he doesn't do as much work as we don't want him to do, because he will tire himself out to where the next day he can't even really get up in the morning.
Gotcha.
So, but we can't question it. Like, we can't say, "Oh, Dad, you can't get annoyed. We can't get irritated." That never even enters my mind, because, again, going back to I was going to say a kid, but even into my early adult years, I would have things like cars breaking down in the middle of the freeway, weird hours of the day, and call my dad, and boom, he was there. It didn't matter if he was at work. It didn't matter if he was sleeping. It didn't matter, right? And he was a mechanic, so he was like,
oh wow,
so he would just show up. And so it's kind of like it's, as you said, it's like the reverse of what we normally think about karma. It's my turn to pay back, I guess.
Right.
I don't know
right. You're the karmic response.
Yeah, I got so much to fulfill, because I could never give him back as much as he's given me.
Right.
And then part of this is a little off topic, but part of that I also think about, I know you guys mentioned would our kids take care of us. And part of that is me, as a payback to what my dad has always done for me, or my mom. I have to be that person for my kids now. And when they call at weird hours, or when they need this or they need that. So it's this never-ending cycle of just family looking after each other, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it.
I first of all, family, it's family first. You look out for your family, especially your kids, your parents, and so on and so forth. But I find it quite interesting, especially hearing it from you, because first of all, everything I've seen and learned about you is like you're a man of really of real family quality, of real you have a man of high moral character and fiber. Okay. So to hear that, because I hear so many, it's so easy for a father, speaking for myself, to get caught in the frustration of what your kids will have you go through or what have you. But it's like, I'll tell my daughter in a heartbeat, nobody's going to love you as pure as your dad. Okay. I want to see you win, So it's like, that's reflected in the actions and so forth. And that is set as a metric. Okay. But question, that's coming to mind for you. Have you ever thought about, what do you want your kids, and when you're in that position, what do you want your kids to do? What do you see as an ideal situation in your later years? Do you want to be in a retirement home? Do you want to stay in like the back room, or like at the house? The family secret, out by the shed.
That noise.
I'm like, how do you see it, Gordon?
That's a good question. So I haven't put a lot of thought into it so much, maybe more recently, because I'm over the hill a little bit. I'm on my way down, I guess you could say.
A little
Uh,
bit. Okay, no, go.
yeah, a little. Yeah, let's say a little bit. And
Hey,
so
I'm getting momentum on the other side.
you're getting momentum.
Go on, go on.
And so as far as like mental and physical wellness, that has been something that I've been thinking about lately, and I've been doing better taking care of myself, right? Because I don't want to be a burden, and you hear people say that all the time, and I think it's a great way to look at things, is not wanting to be a burden. But I think for my childhood, we kind of grew up on, say, the lower side of like middle class, financially speaking, a lot of challenges and a lot of struggles and a lot of things like that. And I think that maybe I've thought too much about the financial side. So I've been preparing like life insurance and a trust and things like living benefits in case something happens and I'm not dead, right? Because it's not always death that's the biggest financial challenge. That's actually probably the smallest financial challenge. It's the taking care of elders while they're still alive that it sometimes can be more financially stressful. And so maybe because of the scarcity growing up, I've been focused a lot more on that and preparing those kinds of things so that money is maybe one of the things they don't have to worry so much about. If I become a really evil person, they can send me to a home somewhere, and hopefully the structuring that I put together allows them to financially do that without struggling. So who knows, right? But if that's the case, hopefully I can see well enough what's going on around me that I'm okay with it, because I know that was one of the things that we had with my mom, is that near the end, we had put plans in place to figure out how to put her into a assisted living facility. And more so because her physical abilities were weak, not so much her mind. And at first, she did not like that idea at all. And so hopefully I don't fight that so much when I'm at that point where they're just like, Dad, we can't deal with you anymore. It's because I mean, they're going to have their own families, right? Hopefully. Hopefully they're going to have their own families, and I don't want to be the one that puts a strain on their marriages, makes it harder for them to be parents or whatever the case. Because if I'm mentally not 100% there, then that's not their fault. If anything, it's partly my fault, partly all the stuff we put in our food as a society, but it's not their fault necessarily, right? So hopefully everything that little by little, I'm not 100% yet. I'm still working on it, but little by little, hopefully we're in a place where they have options available to them. So
Sam's getting his DoorDash order.
They're at the front door. But Gordon, it's you mentioned cycles, and I say this every few episodes. I say it. The cycle that you run through from what you've done with your sons, Jay, when you come out and you meet his sons, you will see the cycle. You will see the cycle. It is just passed around how it just came around from Gordon to pass. I guess I didn't really think about it, growth and growing up until you said it the way that you said it, about your father always being there and your mother, how what's been the conversations we've had. And a lot of people didn't get I had both my parents with me growing up. I was the first one in my family to leave the house, and third one born, but first to leave. And I've always had my family. It was after I left the house stuff started happening, and I started hearing from it from afar and hearing from overseas while I was in the military and while I was in training, and I hear stuff. But your story you're talking about cycles, and I mean, you have probably one of the best stories with cycles because of what you've done with your sons, and I've seen it, and I have seen it, and it's amazing to sit back there and talk like that, and to hear you say it right now again gets me excited. and makes me happy for the future, because you got 4 boys who are going to be doing the same thing that they seen from you, and that level of coolness that you have about you. I have not seen you get upset about anything yet. You probably seen me get fired up about some things, namely my car, if anything, until I get this new one in. But man, you have blessings, Gordon. You got blessings, man. I mean, I don't know how you got this tangent turned on to you like this, but just thinking about what you were talking about, and I do want to flip this and keep it rolling, because I wanted to ask you, Jay, where do you see yourself 20 years from now? Do you see yourself in your own place, or do you see yourself leaning on someone else to help you make that? Have you looked about that, thought about that?
You know what? I think, I remember, like one of my earlier memories is when my great grandmother lived with my grandmother. I remember visiting my grandmother's house, and my great grandmother was there. She was a double amputee, and she was, she was aware, but you can tell that, even at that young age, she wasn't all aware, So, but I remember my grandmother loving on her. Just all she had to do was just have that pulse and a smile. And my grandmother just loved on her, and that was her mama, you can't go wrong with that. Okay. I would love to be, I mean, I'm sure on some levels I would think, oh, do they really need me here? What have you? But I would like to feel that I'm contributing and being a good source of spirit and knowledge that I can impart to the family. I mean, I could say I can be on some beach somewhere being tended, to, hand and foot, all, whatever that I could say that, but that's an empty thing. It's empty. Okay. Being able to give every piece of knowledge, every piece of love to my daughter, my grandkids, that's the only thing really of substance to me, so that's where I would ideally like to be. I mean, even though, again, it was always on the back end of that, I know she might move to Spain or what have you, anywhere in the world, and I want her to have her life, but I never want her to doubt that her dad is there when she needs to talk and love on her. Okay. Because and I think we're going to call this the Gordon show today. Because my dad wasn't in my household growing up. I grew up in a single parent household. So when you're talking about your dad being there for this and that and all that, I mean, my dad didn't overextend himself. I knew who he was, and what he said he was going to do, he delivered on. But when his time came, we weren't really very chit chatty and bondy. So I got a call. We had a talk one day. I got a call a few months later. He passed on. So and basically the way it was broken down to me is that he knew he had cancer, but he didn't want to burden me with that. I guess he didn't want me to get attached so much at the end, which I was robbed of questions and time. And I've seen that scenario that happened with me with other people. And I would tell them, yeah, I get it. You were robbed of the opportunity to ignore that person. You were robbed of the opportunity to stay away, because guess what? 9 times out of 10, that's not really where your heart would send you. You want to ask that one last question about, that's the only question only that parent can answer. What did you think when you first met mom or dad, or when I was born, what was the first thing that hit your mind, or when I got sick at school and they told you this, and how did you react? What happened the day you quit your job because they wouldn't let you go and take care of me? But tell me that story. All those things are lost in time then, so there's no time machine for that. But
Mm.
the only real time machine is spending time and imparting that knowledge and sharing it might be a minutia to some people, but to be able to, those little things that make life, those little steps that were when you went left, when you should have went right. But guess what? It brought you into this world. I wasn't even supposed to meet your mom that day. I had a job appointment. I got lost, asked the lady for directions, and voila, we got married. That kind of deal. All of those things. That's the sauce of life for me. That's the sauce. So I got lost in there somewhere, so I apologize. as Samuel will say in a minute, that wasn't the question.
well, Gordon, go ahead and respond back to that since he brought you up in there.
Yeah, no. Well, first and foremost, this is not the Gordon show, but no, I think you're 100% right, because I had a great relationship with my mom, and even then, I felt like there was so much more that I could have asked her, so much more that I could have learned from her. And so it is those little things, those little conversations. I remember, of course, when you're a kid, you remember things, the big things. You go to Disneyland or SeaWorld or, whatever I remember one of the things that I remember is the air show. We had the Miramar on naval base or air base or whatever. We would go to the air shows. So big things like that obviously stay in your memory, but I also remember little things like I remember my mom and I would go on the city bus everywhere, because most of the time my mom didn't actually own a car. So we'd be going on the bus to this, or we'd be going on the bus to that. And after, say, like a doctor's appointment, she'd sneak me to the ice cream shop. We get a little ice cream, right? And just chill for a little bit, And it's those little things. I remember, with my dad, we didn't necessarily have that when I was younger, but into my adult years, in my 20s and 30s, we actually did get to like sit down every once in a while and have these talks that we had never had before, and it's those, because I remember, like, of all the things that I can go back into my memory bank, which is week 2, but go back into my memory bank and think about things that with my dad. There was one time where we actually talked at a Carl's Jr. here in Oceanside, and it wasn't like we planned it. Let's go sit down and talk. We were on our way to here, on our way to there, and let's go grab a couple burgers. And we had some burgers and we talked, and we had this conversation about some of the struggles that came with their divorce. And I never imagined my dad to even ask me about that, right? Because my dad's, he was kind of, I would say a traditional Mexican man that was a little macho, had never told me my whole life that he loved me, but I never felt unloved. Like, the love was there 100%. Like, it wasn't even a question. There was no, generational curses that go along. Maybe there are. Maybe I'm passing stuff on to my kids that I'm not realized, but the words don't necessarily have to always be there. But that conversation, I was probably 30 years old when we had that conversation, and it sticks in my mind because it took that long, say, for he and I to get comfortable enough with each other to have that level of a talk, where before, up until then, at least into my teenage years, it was more like, I'm the boss, you're going to do what I say, no questions asked, right? Which is fine in a very loving way, but never like, how did you feel about stuff? Never, how did you feel it now? And it was one of those moments. So those little things that Jay's talking about are so important that you don't always realize them until you start thinking, why is that still sticking in my brain? Oh, it's because, this is what happened. This is what I came away from after that little talk or that little experience or whatever.
I out of curiosity, and I for as the Mexican American experience, when you say that, your dad was and please correct me when I'm wrong, he was a typical average Mexican, and how he expressed love, or is that you say you don't say I love you I mean, is
Yeah, I mean, normally, yeah, there's a lot of machismo, a lot of I'm the man, this is my role, I can't, the moms are always the loving side, the dad is the structure, though, let's get to work. So yeah, traditionally you could say he fit into that.
I gotcha. Well,
not anymore. He's like, man, he's such an more amazing version of himself now.
Oh, he gets a chance to switch gears.
Has evolved, and oh
I've heard something to that degree before about different cultures and what have you. I'm from the South. We say my people from the South. Mississippi way, South Carolina, and you say love you all the time. Like, oh, I love you. This. I'm like, all right, I'm going to the store. Love you. That kind of deal. But that part of that connection for as my the dad. It was. I remember saying it to my dad when I was like 14, 13 years old or what have you, and it was strange for me because he's never said it, but I quote unquote didn't necessarily doubt it. But I'm like, well, we weren't really together a lot,
Yeah.
So it was one of those things. Samuel, was that part of your experience? Like, did you guys say I love you, between you and your dad?
Definitely said I loved you a lot in my family. That was I was trying to look back at, because that was almost like you said, this is the Gordon show.
I mean, he's got great stuff. I'm working with it. There's no pride here, bro.
I've had two parents in my life. I've had two parents, and it's been good. I didn't recognize that there was any problems in my family till I went to therapy. And that's when stuff started coming out, because that's when I started recognizing things that I was doing and the circumstances that built me to do that, or built me up to do those things. And when I recognized that, things changed a lot. Not that I changed. I made decisions that would probably be best for another podcast right now. But I learned a lot going through therapy about the situations and who I am. That helped me out a lot, and I didn't realize that it was necessary up until after I got into therapy and I started seeing things, and it just started opening things up for me. And that's just me. But keeping on track, I want to keep us and steer the ship right.
You know what? You never answered that question though. Where's your end goal? Like, how do you see yourself being taken care of?
How do I see myself being taken care of?
Yes, sir.
I said it earlier. I believe in karma. I believe in karma, and things that I have done and people that I've talked to and that I've loved on and that I poured into. I believe and I feel, I don't have legal documents, but I feel that they will do for me what I have done for them. There are a couple of documents that I have done.
Family. You want to live with
I do have an irrevocable will, so I do want to say that. So I can make some updates to that whenever I need or whenever the need comes. Right. But I put out what I want to get back. And that's where I am. I look at things that I set myself up for financially, for taking care of myself. I will say this: my father recently passed, and I remember him. As I mentioned to you before, I was the first one to leave the household at 18 years old. And when I did, it was probably within a year or two after I left. That's when my mother and father got a divorce, and I was like, whoa, that was a huge thing for me. My father and my mother both, they never remarried, and he always used to say, I'm not going to get married. I don't want to get married. I personally would say, like, why not? Why don't you want to join with someone else and do something together? I never saw that. It was very it was different to me. My father was a Marine back in the days, and when Marines was really tough in the 60s. They were just integrating into the Marine Corps, and it was a very, very rough time. That was a different time. So I look at that whole thing differently, and I hope I'm answering your question. but I've never I always believe that I put out what I want to get back. And there are some things I did have to set into place, financially wise, health wise, things that I put as a priority. Some people that I've known, don't have insurance. They can't cover for themselves, and it's a rough world there. I made my life, I adjusted my life to making sure that I had those things set before I went to other directions. So just like I mentioned about the cars, yeah, I don't have the big fancy car because there are other priorities in life that need to be paid for, like insurances and like things like that, so that those things are covered. Now we can get to where we need to go to, and if it comes to us riding on a bus like Gordon mentioned, then that will happen. But know that I worked and I worked it out so that these things would carry for myself, and karmically I believe that things were going to come back my way, and I always look for the positive side to things. So I'm a optimistic person, so I might have double dipped in an answer for you.
No, you answered it well. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay, so with that being said, I want to pass this on back here. Question here is, what wisdom, grace, or lesson have you gained from dealing with an aging parent, elder, or loved one? Gordon, start off with you.
So I think what I learned was that the little things don't matter so much. The little differences of opinion, the little, whatever, the minor stuff doesn't matter, because it's really about just, I think about that saying, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Because when you think about older folks that are starting to maybe forget things, or they're starting, maybe because they're going through these challenges, they might be a little more irritable, or they might, whatever, they're not the same necessarily person that you knew before. You could, bicker and argue and try to be right and all of that, but at the same time, that's not necessarily getting you anywhere. It's not helping them at all. And so sometimes it's just better to kind of let things go and not worry about that little stuff, and just focus on happiness and like the unity of the family unit, keeping it together, keeping everybody a little bit of harmony, if you want to call it that. I know these are words that are sound a little foo-foo, but it really is so important, and it makes a big difference at the end of the day when you can look back and how did my day go? Okay, it did good. I did good here, and then I could do a little bit better here for the next day or whatever.
Jay?
I think the biggest lesson that I picked up from my especially seeing my mother. She had she was one of 10 siblings, and so it was, first of all, family doesn't work without forgiveness. No matter what, you're gonna mess up. You're gonna show the ugly side. Things are gonna happen. Okay, but you have to have forgiveness to keep moving. Okay, and on the inverse of that, family is often wrongly done. Is that the family members are the people that you would give the forgiveness to the least. You'll give it to somebody at the office, or somebody you got to deal with here and there, that are really not a consequential part of your life. Okay, but they may have been wronged or what have you. You'll give them forgiveness quicker than the person that raised you from birth. And I think this popular in just about every culture I've heard of, or I'm familiar with, I'll say for the most part, is that you give that kid that speech. I did the best with what I had. Forgive me. It was the best of what I had. I wasn't perfect. Okay. But don't you ever doubt I loved you in every possible way. That was my kid.
Wow. Strong. Wow. Did I ask you that, Gordon, a question already?
Yeah. I'm glad I went first.
definitely hits a little different. Here, so I'm trying to think of how do we end this on a good note, because this seems like it was a lot of, we all went through these personal things. I'd like to leave it with this question, asking you guys, what would you give? What information could you? Matter of fact, I know I got that question in here. Let me see something. What would you here you go. What would you tell someone who is currently struggling with an aging parent, elder, or loved one? And I'm going to start with myself right here, because we're going to kind of close this out. Being that I am the one who's a caregiver out of the group of us here, definitely I've learned about patience. But my biggest thing is I try to separate church from state. And when I say church from state, I try to look at the disease versus the humanity versus mortality. And that was something I wrote earlier when you were speaking, Gordon, earlier. I wrote down mortality. People don't realize until you're hurt yourself how much you really need other people. A lot of times people don't want to act like they need help. I don't need help, man. I can take care of myself. This is going to work itself out. My father had a stroke, and I came and I said, Dad, you got a stroke, let's go to the hospital. You know what he told me? I'm gonna wait in the morning, just give me some coffee. I won't go to the hospital in the morning. And I'm like, Dad, and he's got to I said, Dad, you had a stroke. You didn't want to go nowhere. You didn't want to do anything. He's like, I can take care of myself, just give me some coffee. That kind of stuff, some people, when you look at things, mortality is what people face. And you when you see a person facing mortality and how they face mortality, it can be pretty scary. And especially when it's someone who's raised you and you love this person and you see them slowly but surely breaking down. And a lot of people, and I mentioned this earlier from, I forgot which were the two of you that said it today, they don't look at that, they don't put themselves in that person's situation. They do not put themselves in that person's situation and say, hey, I've never been a quadriplegic before. I've never, had to worry about losing a home or lived homeless with 5 kids on my back. I've never had to go through these things. I never have. We sit back and we think it's easy to talk about, oh, well, you beat me when I was younger. Why you beat, but you don't know what he went through to get to what he did, or to even, he might still be beating you now. Mm-hmm. So those are the perspectives that I think that one of the two of you mentioned it today. It was just taking that perspective from the other person. And for me, in the situation that we're in my home right now, it's about mortality. Every day is about mortality with us here. I have 2, and I forgot the word. I think they call it nonagenarians. People that are in their 90s. They call them nonagenarians. I think that's what it is. In your 90s, every day is a blessing. When you get up in the morning and you move around and you don't hear the snap, crackle, and pops of the joints and the pain and the medications, every day is a blessing. And when the person loses that understanding of their mortality, that gets scary, because they don't care about themselves and they don't care about you sometimes. And you gotta be stronger than the disease. You gotta be stronger than the issue. You gotta be stronger. So it makes me have to be, or us have to be on point a whole lot more than we have had to do previously. So I think I kind of went a little bit overboard on that. But starting with you, Jay, what would you tell someone who was currently struggling with an aging parent, elder, or loved one?
Okay. Well, I real quick story that a friend of mine was telling me about this young lady in our community. Well, older lady. She's in her probably late 50s, early 60s, and he was talking about how one day they were at this reggae club, and she took off her top and just flipped it around, and the guy and the guys that knew her, like, she was like the cousin that was just, maybe a little off, but what have you. But other people are like, oh, she's crazy. And one of the guys, a friend of mine that told me this when he was there, he said, here's the deal. This woman was trafficked. She abusive relationships, shipped over state lines, just the horror stories. When she was there at that club that night, that was a celebration of life for her. Okay. For those eyes that didn't know the history, that's just a crazy lady. But the people that knew her, that was a celebration of life, that I made it this far despite everything trying to get in my way. So I say with this, as this part of the heart, when you're dealing with people that are challenging you, especially your family, if you don't have love, if you don't have grace for that person, who will? They're not going to be perfect, but they're yours. And you may be the last contact with that person for as a human connection before that next journey. It can be one of comfort and patience and love, or it can be hell. I'd rather be able to, I can sleep at night where I know with those contacts that we had and those interactions, it was with love in every step.
Go ahead and do that thing there, Jay. Love that, man. Love that.
I like that.
Go ahead, Gordon.
Wow, how do I go after that? No. I think I like what you said regarding the separations, because mental illness is a physical condition, not has nothing to do with our soul, right? And so although somebody is going through these challenges physically with their mind and all of that stuff, their soul is still their soul. Their soul is still intact. I can't necessarily fully explain that, but I believe that. I believe that there is a separation. We are living in two, say, worlds at the same time, if you want to call it that. And there's the physical, and then there's the spirit or the soul. And just because they're going through those mental challenges, those physical challenges, getting up and getting around and all of that, and the challenges that go with somebody who's going through those challenges is having to deal with themselves, right? Because other people got to deal with them, but they got to deal with themselves, right? And so in my mind, the soul is still intact. And so, back to what Jay was saying, the grace and the love and the patience really is going to be, I think, what makes it work to the best possible scenario, best possible case, I guess.
All right. There we go, folks. There we go. So before we go, I do want to say this. I believe we are spirit beings. I think we all are spirit beings. And I don't know if a lot of people know that, but I do. I believe that we truly are spirit beings. There is a spirit within us. And I think that sometimes some people, just like the three of us here, we're more in touch with our spirits than other people are. And that's why we're having these conversations, because you don't realize other people know what we know or feel, and they don't even know it until they hear someone else say it. And then it becomes something big for them. So with that being said, I want to give this closing nugget here. I want to say here, here's a nugget I want to leave us with. When our elders change, the question is not only how do we take care of them, the deeper question is, how do we stay loving, grounded, honest, and whole while the people who shaped us begin to need something different from us? This is not easy work, but it is sacred work. And for many families, it is one of the most honest tests of love, patience, and emotional maturity. So until next time, keep uplifting yourselves, keep uplifting each other, and keep uplifting our community.